It's a good question, and in order to answer that question, we have to look at what shamanism is about. Shamanism, or shaman, by the way, is a word that comes from the Tungus language of Siberia. Uh, the word shaman is not really universally used. Each tribe may have its own name based on its language, but universally, primary level cultures and tribes have someone in their community whose job it is to help keep the spirit of the community and the people of the community in balance, which is a lot about what shamans do. So anthropologists began to use the term shaman about 100 years ago, about the same time as they were looking into what is going on in the world. So anthropology then named this global phenomena of medicine people shamans so that they would have a sort of a reference point in their discussions. So when you talk about a shaman, you are talking about an individual who is from the tribe, whose job it is to take care of the spiritual aspect of the community and to keep balance among the people, the balance of the individual, balance of relationships, the balance of the tribe within the world and with spirit. That's what a shaman does. Shamanic practices have been around the planet for at least 40,000 years that we know of. We see evidence of that on cave walls and a variety of different kind of burial sites that seem to have an individual depicted or in a particular burial arrangement that suggested that that person had some special significance, but it was different from being a king or different from being a chief. The significance seemed to be a lot more spiritually oriented, if that makes sense. So we know that shamans or shamanic practice have been around that long, and the practices that have developed over the last at least 40,000 years have come down to us as very powerful and effective kinds of tools in order to help us to work with spirit, with the spirit world. Today, and again over the last 100 years that we've been studying shamanic work, we have discovered that shamans have a particular kind of lineage. In other words, in an indigenous tribal setting or primary level culture, the shaman of the tribe is someone who was picked out early on in their lives, maybe as a child. And the current shaman then would take that child or that young person into his home or take care of him or her for an extended period of time. So the shaman apprentice then would literally work day by day by day with the current shaman to learn all the practices. Then, of course, whenever the elder shaman would die, the younger shaman would take over that role, and then the cycle would continue. It would begin again, and so this would happen time and time and time again. So in a strictly traditional sense, the shaman is an individual who's been raised for his entire life for the single purpose of being the go-between between the tribe and the person and spirit. That kind of lineage really no longer exists in our Euro-American culture. We don't have the kind of support systems that make that possible. And our indigenous cultures in Southwest Indians, for example, or in other indigenous tribes, they still do have, in a lot of ways, that same tradition. So then from the perspective of traditional shamanism, they may have a lineage that goes along with that, and then they have the ability then to call themselves a shaman because they've earned it. In Middle America, the same thing. There's a lot of Latinos who have gone through the same sort of training and have come through the families and have therefore earned the title of the name shaman. Again, in our culture, we don't have that. The closest that we have is at least 200 years in the past, and probably further, maybe 1,000 years or more in the past. So let me be clear about one thing. I don't call myself a shaman, and I'm a little bit suspicious of those who do. I do use shamanic practice in the work that I do with people in terms of teaching and healing and that sort of thing. But uh, shaman, no, not really. I don't have the kind of training for that. Um, but that doesn't mean that the practices that we use as shamanic practitioners are not effective. I see all the time that um, they do change people's lives. They do heal and they do help. So I honor the fact that there are these practices that have come to us, and from a point of view of contemporary shamanism, as a contemporary shamanic practitioner, I feel a responsibility to bring what I do, what we do, as true to the original ideas as we can possibly get them. We try not to make up new stuff. We use the practices that have been proven over time, some of which we'll talk about a little bit later, like the shamanic journey, which is a very important practice for people who are interested in connecting with their spirit and with the spirit world. In terms of healing, practices like soul retrieval are very powerful. Curse removal or curse healing is very powerful. So these practices that have evolved and have come to us over many generations have efficacy because they work. In the shamanic context, if it doesn't work, then it's not done. If it works, then it is used and it is built upon as people better understand how everything works. So contemporary shamanism then is the application of traditional ancient kinds of practices and techniques to our contemporary and social structure. And again, the responsibility of the practitioner is to be as true to that heritage and lineage as possible.